all for joining us today. I'm super excited. I know we have a full house, but that is the best thing because we have new friends, old friends coming together to talk about why Ethereum is so awesome. And it's awesome. And for those of us who have been to conferences this fall, I feel like there's this enthusiasm that kind of follows us through after. And for those who were there and want to experience it, that's what we're here to talk about. Or those who were there and did experience it, and for those who want to experience it. So we have a bunch of friends today. I've posted online about how it's like show and tell kind of. So like when you're back in school and you're like, yay, I get to bring someone, or like, what was it like, take your daughter to work day or something. So like this is our way of bringing people in who we don't generally get to talk to on a live stream. And we get to do that today. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them. And let's start with intros. I'm Jessica. I'm the executive director at C4. And let's get started going around. I guess, Cheyenne, do you want to start by introducing yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Cheyenne. I'm the committee chair for CEP, Certified Ethereum Profession. And on the side, I'm the CTO at Ether Capital.
Cool. And your friend that you brought today is?
So my friend is Edgar. I can give you like a short intro before jumping in, or do you want to go through it? Okay, I'll do that. So
whatever you want.
I have a nice story.
World's your oyster.
So I met Edgar at DEF CON 3 in Cancun, and we were staying at this. In hindsight, it's interesting because we were staying at this hostel nearby, which I remember my head and toes were hitting the walls on both ends. And that hostel was interesting because a bunch of people that we met there, we still like in touch. And I remember we did scuba diving together on that trip. And it was more of a Mexican scuba diving because they asked if we have like certificate. We're like, no. It's like, here's a pool, go play 10 minutes and then 10 meters down the ocean. So I'm glad we survived. And we had another episode that we met in Costa Rica when I was stuck there for 4 months. And we went to Monteverde, which was one of my favorite places. And then the third season basically was the last DEF CON in Bogota, which we were hanging out. So I'll let Edgar take it from here.
Yeah, it was amazing. To be honest, it's kind of fun to just like, I don't know, the people that you meet in conferences that afterwards you kind of keep in your life. I don't know. I think it's one of the main reasons why going to DEF CONs are pretty much rocks. So yeah, just as a quick intro, I'm Edgar Barrantes. Right now I'm a Cairo developer at Nethermind. I work in the Starknet ecosystem. Yeah, like how we met. It's actually quite cool. Thanks for that intro, Cheyenne. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do right now. That's me. Okay. I don't know who wants to go next.
Yeah, that was great. Well, I guess I didn't realize that my friend apparently doesn't like me anymore. No, I'm just kidding. He was unable to come. He just had a family emergency. So Harpreet, we forgive you. And he said he'll be on a different stream later. I don't know if he's messaging other people that like, you know, he knew I was wearing socks with sandals and was so embarrassed that he couldn't like handle being on the stream with me. I don't know. But either way, I'm sure that he will be back on a later stream. So let's talk about who else we have here. Dustin, do you want to introduce yourself and your friend?
Sure, I'm Dustin. I work at the Ethereum Foundation at one of the ecosystem development teams. So what I do is get people using Ethereum, get people building Ethereum. And one of the things that I did at DEF CON as well is I was one of the mentors for the DEF CON scholars, and that's how I met my friend who I'm bringing here, Michelle. So we met at the DEF CON Scholars Dinner. We had a long conversation, and she's very enthused about education, and she's got a really interesting background. So I'll let her take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle. I hate intros. So I used to run a global media company called The Tempest, and so did that for a couple of years and helped scale it to millions of people. From there, I built a business accelerator program, and that was to help early stage female founders go from early stage to revenue in 60 days. And a reason for that was because like there's a lot of tech focused programs, not enough for product led businesses. And then recently started going down like the blockchain Web3 rabbit hole. And so essentially I was a DevCon scholar this year, just learned a lot. And now I'm heading ops at a venture studio, a Web3 venture studio, and I'm part of a few DAOs now. So that's me.
Cool. I love it. Thank you. And Michelle, you and I have talked a little bit about DevCon, being a DevCon scholar, and C4 has donated a bunch of exams to all the DevCon scholars and whatnot. But so I'm looking forward to talking to you more about how we can work together to increase education in the space for sure. Okay, who is next? I'm like looking at it. It's like, you guys know, like the Brady Bunch, where it's like all the squares, because we've got a lot of people today, which is wonderful. So next up, Sonal.
All right. Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Sonal. I lead our research and development unit. I help with operations and strategy at Consensus Mesh. And I also lead our enterprise zero knowledge research team within that unit, where we focus on things like the baseline protocol and other standards that enterprises would be focusing on. And in that baseline community, I guess over a year ago now, I would be in our live streams that we also do each week and see this bright smiling face of Otto Mora around. And I didn't really know who he was yet. I knew where he was working and that he was doing blockchain related stuff for enterprises. And then throughout the year, we talked more and more, never enough, but then we got to meet at DevCon and got to just brain dump all of our aligned interests and things we're working on, and actually set up meetings with people we work with and bridge some gaps in person. It was super effective and fun, but also got to know him as a person more. So that was very exciting. And I'm happy that he's joining as my friend today. And Otto, I'll hand over to you for your intro.
Yeah, thanks, Sonal. Yes, as you were saying, I've been following the baseline protocol almost since it started. I was curious about it. I decided I would just kind of, take a leap and start like getting on the calls a lot more. So yeah, I am into definitely the baseline protocol, ZKP, all that cool stuff. And yeah, and because of that, and I also kind of got into Polygon eventually, where I currently work as a business developer for Polygon ID for the Americas region, which is a self-sovereign identity protocol. So we're trying to, kind of grow the ecosystem, trying to get issuers and, verifiers of credentials and wallet providers to kind of adopt the protocol. So no, great to be here. Great. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you for joining. It's fun when you haven't met someone in person, but you've known them for a long time and you finally get to. So that's cool you two were able to do that. All right, so we have two people left to do intros. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself? And then Luna.
Awesome, yeah. Josh McDougall. I am a director with C4 and I'm on the CEP committee as well as the CCSS and CCSSA committees. Been around C4 for a long time, been around the industry for a while in a couple different roles. But more importantly, how did I meet Luna? Well, we've known each other since about, I think, 2016 now, quickly became fast friends. We've experienced a number of different DevCons together, both Prague and Osaka, and Cancun, actually. And most recently, neither of us got to go to the recent DevCon, so we're looking forward to hearing what others thought of it. But we did meet up at the Cosmoverse conference in Medellin just before that. So we do have some recent conference chats to have, but Luna Hawk and I have bonded over mostly art and the NFT space and the frustrations in that space, as well as sending copious amounts of dog pictures back and forth throughout the day. So I'll let Luna Hawk introduce herself.
And let's not forget me beating you in board games, but we'll let that go.
I don't remember that happening.
Hi, I'm Luna Hawk. I'm an artist and photographer, and I've been in the crypto space since 2014, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I think it's kind of cool that the conference Cosmoverse was also in Colombia. So everyone on this call was in Colombia within the past month. So that's pretty neat. Okay. So I think that what we should do to get started is, and I know we kind of did the round robin thing for the intros, but we can just all jump in and talk and just kind of join in so we can, I guess, share our experiences at conferences that we've been to, but also just our experiences within the cryptocurrency space. It's such a cool ecosystem. And as anybody who's watching can see pretty quickly, there are so many different places to join to be a part of it and so many different ways to become involved. And so let's talk first, I guess, about some of the things that we learned at conferences. So did anyone go to a session in particular that was like, oh my God, I can't believe I saw this, this has changed everything, or that you just think people would be interested to know more about?
I can try it. So just before jumping in, it's interesting that, so the DEF CON is getting so big that even here, like me and Jessica met a few times just because like we were staying at the same hotel and we ran into each other and we were planning to meet up. It didn't happen. Like I just learned like Sonal, Dustin, Hanno was like, oh, we all were there, but like we did not meet up, which is like shows how big these conferences are getting.
Yeah, and you and I ran into each other on the street corner, and we were with, I was with Miss, who's also from C4, and you and Miss were on accident wearing a matching outfit, which like,
oh yeah, the same pants.
So random.
Yeah, it was like,
yeah.
It's like a red pants too. It's not like that much common. Yeah, but like one of the things is interesting. I feel like people that did not attend DEF CON may have like watched more of the talks than people that actually were there. Like I know friends that are telling me about the talks that were awesome, and I'm like, I have those tabs open. I'm gonna like watch them someday. Some of the things that was interesting for me, so was attended a few of the educational, like funding education and basically borderless ecosystems. And one thing I noticed is we are still, I know like this whole DEF CON being in South America is more pushing for Latin America education and others, but still we're in this echo chamber of not seeing the whole world as the whole world and like being limited by a lot of like, a lot of them comes from like where the company that is doing the project is registered and is limited how global they can go, which I feel like it should be the other way around with the space that we are in. And I had really good conversations, and there are some initiatives that started, which I'll be sharing like probably in 2-3 weeks more on my Twitter and others about these initiatives. But that was interesting for me to see that even though we're expanding, the sense of globalization is not still yet fully there. Which back in the day, like maybe 2015, 2016, is more was like, oh, here's one Earth, one blockchain. And now we have a different view on that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. There have been a number of like, because I'm based in Asia, so there are a number of projects that are based here that are often asking like, what can we do? What are our scaling solutions? And what is more surprising to me is that there aren't a lot more L2s in Asia than I thought there would be. There are some that are active, but they're really like, Polygon's very active because, like originally based in India and now moved to Dubai. So like, it's a geocentric thing. Stroll is very active as well. But what surprises me more is, two of the biggest giants in the room are not really in Asia, and that's what I'd love to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and on the point of how big the conference was, it also felt so small at the same time. Like you'd meet someone coincidentally, and then you just see them nonstop the whole week at places you wouldn't expect. Hopefully you liked them because you really couldn't escape people there. But it was really cool because then you find them in a different setting and you find more aligned interests you have, or they introduce you to new people. So it was really easy to make good friends quickly in that setting, which really surprised me because you go into the venue and you see like 5 floors and so many people, which is very overwhelming when most of us sit here all day like this. But it was very exciting.
That's I find it, I always say, and it's funny because no one has actually talked about a talk yet, and that was the topic of conversation. But I have to agree with that's just kind of how conferences go. That's the the true benefit. You can open that tab and watch that talk later. Being there and socializing with people, finding out what they're passionate about, finding out what they're working on, what their pain points are, what they're excited about, is just such a beneficial thing. The Cosmo, again, I didn't get to go to DevCon, but the Cosmoverse conference, I think one of the best parts about it is they made so much really welcoming social space. You know, they had a coffee bar and you could just go and sit outside or sit on some nice couches inside. And there was just a really nice, welcoming, kind of creative feeling space, where you could go grab anyone at any time and say, hey, you know, let's go have that conversation now. And I imagine DevCon kind of had similar.
I think, yeah, absolutely. It was just like Sonal and Josh were saying, like just overwhelming, this 5-floor building. You eventually run into people at this crypto meetups, and maybe it's a small group of like 10, 20 people, but this is like that times 100. And you're like, it's everybody's into crypto, and specifically Ethereum in this case. And it was just, yes, I mean, just being around that, I got so much energy from the crowd, honestly, like just learning about all the projects that were happening. For me also, like the hackathon, the weekend prior, the Eat Bogota hackathon was very energizing. And I didn't realize the ecosystem in LATAM was so big, honestly. Even being myself from LATAM, I was just blown away. The folks in Medellin, the folks in Peru, Chile, Mexico, like, Argentina also, it's so impressive. So many startups, so many people putting effort into this space. So yeah, that was like very energizing.
So
One of the really cool things. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll continue. Just like one of the really cool things is that DevCon doesn't really finish at the venue. It's like every day there were at least maybe 20 events where you would meet people. And I remember Cheyenne and I were like trying to go to the same one night, and we were like, man, there's just so many. And I think that's one of the coolest way to meet people as well, because you're like not in a work/conference setting, and you can just like make a friend, and afterwards you realize, oh, this guy is giving a talk about something that I'm actually quite passionate about. So afterwards you just go. And yeah, that's something that's just like really invaluable about going to the actual place. So yeah.
I don't think you quite get the sheer size of how much is being built until you're in that energy and you just see everyone being so excited about it. Like, this is my first big crypto conference, and I guess all the other ones that I've been to have been so commercialized, and it was very conferencey. And this is the first time I felt like I've never been to anything like this before. And no one spoke about prize, like no one spoke about the market. It was so much just about building, and I feel like you had to experience that. So that was cool. And I'm just getting through the list of a lot of the videos. Like, I attended a couple of sessions. One I really liked was the media one. I think it's by the founder of Aave. And he spoke about decentralized media. And that was something I was really interested in, because I've been thinking about like, I feel like the next evolution of media companies is going to be Web3 media. And so he spoke a bit about that, and how, spoke a bit about Lens, and just how, like, I think in terms of community ownership and all those things, like how media is going to be super central. And so I feel like that was a really interesting one. But a lot of the security ones I've now been actually catching up with, and all the Web3 security issues, and how Web3 can learn from a lot of Web2 security incident response cases, and just a lot of those things. And that was just really interesting. So now I'm catching up with the online sessions for a lot of those talks.
That's really interesting to hear that there was some incident response talks. I'm going to have to look those up, because that's definitely something that DAOs specifically are horrible at, because they have to put everything to a vote that takes 7 days. And when you're under attack, it's just not effective.
Yeah, I liked your comment too about like the energy you could feel, and you don't realize how many people are building or interested. So we mentioned the hacker basement, which was the bottom floor of the venue. And you just walk down there and there's just like lights. It's pitch black pretty much, but there's LED lights everywhere and all these workspaces, and you just see developers like with crazy stuff on their screens. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting. I wanted to work down there, but I was like, they're gonna see my screen and see I'm just on a Google Doc and be like, what is she doing? But it was just so exciting to feel that energy. And also everyone was just so welcoming, and you saw people going from different tables collaborating that definitely don't know each other and do completely different work. And also on the note of all of those recorded talks, I think most people I've been talking to are watching these talks over and over again and using them as resources, which I think is a really good sign of the speakers that were selected for DevCon. There were so many. I wondered how they decided. I was rejected, which I'm actually glad now, but it was really nice because there's a wide range of like truly introductory talks on different topics, because you can't know about everything, even if you're deep in the space, but then some deeper, super technical talks so you could find exactly what you were looking for, no matter who you were in the space.
You
What
could
a
just make
really-
your Google Docs in dark mode, and then you're the cool person there. Just kidding. Sorry.
What I was about to say was that I think that it's inclusive to the point that even if you're on Google Docs, like there's a recognition that there's a lot more work to be done that isn't necessarily dev work. And there were a number of people that were doing UX, that were working on other things that you wouldn't consider strictly technical. But I think we all recognize that those are the kinds of things that we need to approach and we need to get better at for larger scale adoption. The other thing I was going to talk about was that, like, I think what was really nice is that there were a number of Explain It Like I'm 5 sessions, and it was really nice to pitch it at that level so that people that didn't want to go in and like go to a very deep technical talk and just be lost at sea, they could, plan to go for the Explain It Like I'm 5 talk. And then it was programmed such that, there would be deeper talks on that topic after that, so that you would be able to get the Explain It Like I'm 5 and go, okay, I'm going to go and watch the deeper talk because now I'm interested. So I went for the one on the counter extraction, and then I met a number of teams that were doing work with like smart contract wallets and counter extraction. I think that that's one of the topics that is really interesting because it changes what we can do with UX. It improves a lot of the problems that we have with people losing their keys, social recovery, lots of things that we can do to make things easier for people to get into Web3.
What was the most like radical account abstraction or most interesting method or model that you saw?
So it wasn't actually a talk. It was actually a meeting I took with some people that came to attend DevCon, and they were working on a wallet that was doing account abstraction. So what they were doing was that their account abstraction was using email DKIM keys, and that was kind of like their security model. It's a lot more in depth, but basically using email DKIM, and then their specialty vertical was going into games. So the idea is like in games you have your access points, whatever, and you would be able to like earn in-game experience points, convert that into gas, and use that to pay for your in-game gas, rather than so you earn with what your in-game actions, and then you use your in-game actions to pay for gas. So I found that to be a very interesting concept.
Very cool. Are there any other projects that anybody came across that they didn't know about before that they feel like would be helpful to share with other people who might want to learn more about those projects but don't even know that they exist?
Like not exactly like answering your question, but about like ZK proofs, which I remember like 5-6 years ago, I was like talking about this whole usage of ZK proof on ID as like when you want to go to a bar, you can just prove your age and not your name, and like all these kind of concepts. But I went to like 1 or 2 of the ZK talks, and it's kind of a joke here, but it was a proof that I have zero knowledge on ZK proofs. As like I had no clue what they were talking about, and I'm like, I need to like learn more about like stocks. And I think Edgar also works on some of these aspects, but I realized that I'm way behind. But it's interesting that we still haven't been able to do that main use of the ZK proof as like have an ID to like just prove your age rather than give your like whole identity to like a bar or a club. But the tech has evolved so much that it's just the beginning.
I want to jump in and I heard so much about ZKP, but for those who are listening who don't even maybe know what I'm saying, I might be saying DPJ. Why don't we say, now that I said that acronym, I'm like, does that stand for something else? But does anyone want to explain what we're talking about when we say zero knowledge? What are the different pieces to it, and kind of why has that community grown?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like a brief overview of it is that what you want is to be able to prove that you know something, or that you have a piece of data. Say, I don't know, that data that is stored here is bigger than 18, right? To prove that I'm older than 18 years old, or 21 if I'm in the States for some reason and I can't drink yet when I'm 18. So yeah, so it's a really big deal because it allows for two main things: privacy, just like in this case, and in the case of Ethereum, scalability, because you can prove that, for example, that a set of transactions were done in a correct way, in a very succinct way, and you can just like push that into Ethereum. I think that's the main reason why that topic is kind of so hot right now. So yeah, I think that was an overview of it. I don't know if it makes sense, because like sometimes one can just like speak. Yeah.
That makes absolute sense. And I think that like initially ZKPs, everyone thought ZKPs were just for security, and then you realize, wait a minute, that's succinct, which means they also have the effect of compression. And then everyone started using ZKPs for like, compression as well. And then I think that's where they've started to come into their own for scalability. But to extend upon what you were saying about like, you can prove like you're above a certain age, you can just make all kinds of assertions that are provably correct without giving away more information than you need to. I can prove I'm a resident of this country and therefore I can buy this property, for example. I can prove that I have enough money to pay for this property, but I don't have to tell you what's in my bank account. There are lots of assertions you can make that are privacy preserving, but allow you to make the assertion you need so that you can fulfill certain legal or whatever requirements that you need without leaking your private data.
I think in the future, we're going to do a whole live stream about zero knowledge, because I didn't know very much about it at all. And in our Zoom chat for everyone watching, Sonal reminded me that when we were talking about ZKP at the conference, I started calling it Zebras Kill Pandas, because I thought that was funny. I'm not sure why. I think I was on very little sleep. Who knows? But I do think that it's something we need to learn more about. I talked to somebody named Thor at the conference for so long about one of the projects that he's doing that it was like 7 o'clock or something, and I didn't realize it had gotten dark. And then I ran into Otto in the happy hour area afterwards, and like time had just flown. I think we talked about it for like 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know by the time I saw him. So I think there's so much to cover about it that it'd be interesting to do a full session on it for our Ethereum exam. You don't need to know all the nuts and bolts of it, but I do think it's something that's going to become more and more important to understand. And I certainly want to know more about it too.
I think we're at a stage where what's really interesting about it is that it's a primitive that's so nascent that, when we first started, thinking like, everyone wants a faster horse and carriage rather than a car. So I think that we're kind of at that stage where the use cases we're thinking of for ZKPs are very basic use cases now, because they haven't been around long enough for us to get really creative with them. I think that's where the opportunity lies as well.
Yeah, we use ZKPs in Polygon ID as well. It's sort of the essential layer, is proving things such as like you're not from a sanctioned country, you have a certain blood type without revealing the blood type, you have a certain amount in your bank account that you've held constantly, things like that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's super cool. But the other factor here too is like, maybe for people like wanting to like know more about this, like there has to be a trusted issuer of that like data as well, right? Somebody has to claim that information without you revealing the whole set of data behind it, but in the end, you're still trusting a third party to like confirm, yes, this person is not from a sanctions country or is above a certain age. So there's that element to it too. But yeah, I mean, also having a full program around ZKP would be awesome.
And I think where ZKP intersects with oracles will get really fascinating as well.
Yeah, it was
From
a
what-
hot topic at the conference. I was going to ask at Cosmos Verse. I don't know much about what happened there, but I do know a lot of people were doing both conferences if they could. What were hot topics, or what was the general themes there?
I guess
I was
I'll
just say
hop
I
in.
wasn't there, but
I said I
could,
guess I'll
like-
hop in. You know, the founders of, or Ethan, Sunny, and Zachy spoke a lot about what they were beginning to build or what they were building on top of Cosmos. And I don't know, it's a very vibrant and interesting ecosystem. And, you know, a lot of the talks, I do have to say, it felt kind of like an advertisement. And I don't mean to like put Cosmoverse down because I love that conference. I went to Portugal. And I think, Josh, maybe you can help me on some of the like technical aspects of what they were talking about at Cosmoverse. But yeah, it was, I'll let him take it over.
So if you're not familiar with the Cosmos space, where Ethereum is trying to create, you know, this global world computer where everything can possibly happen upon this one system, within this one network, within this one ecosystem, which is very valuable because then, you know, the different smart contracts all within the Ethereum space can all kind of interact with each other, and you have, you know, one common interface, be it MetaMask or, you know, MetaMask, where the Cosmos space is trying to be a different architecture. So you think of Ethereum like a big mainframe where everyone kind of works on the same computer. Cosmos is trying to be like in a way, the personal computer of blockchains, where each application actually has its own chain. And chains can also rely on each other and use each other for security. And there's a protocol in which the chains can all talk to each other, which is extremely valuable. So you can move assets around, but you can also move data around. So it's a very neat space. The feeling of the conference, as Luna was saying, it's fascinating how kind of like early Ethereum it feels as well. Like it's got that, like everyone's just trying to figure out like, oh, okay, you know, what do we do with this? The same thing as the ZK right now. Like, cool, like we have this idea, but what's going to be successful? So a lot of the talks were like, okay, you know, we especially for Cosmos or Atom itself, you know, we released this white paper X years ago. We delivered on everything in that white paper. Where do we go from here? So it's kind of like bringing that in the thing. But then there was other networks as well. Secret Network is trying to Secret Network basically is a network focused on privacy, and well, not necessarily privacy, but private smart contracts. So rather than being able to see the state of every smart contract and see everyone's transactions into that smart contract, they try and hide those smart contracts under a layer of privacy, which is a really neat idea. But they're struggling right now to get people to use the network. So their thought is, well, because we have this protocol where any of these networks can talk to each other, we're the privacy layer. If any other network, including Ethereum's actually looking at implementing this protocol as well. If any other network needs privacy elements, you can come use our network just for the private part, but you don't actually have to have everything else locally. So it's an interesting kind of pivot for them to say, hey, we'll be your privacy layer. That way, something that's transparent like Ethereum can still have privacy features, just with a little bit of extendability into this other network. So that was really interesting to see. A lot of I guess one of the award-winning networks is Stargaze, which was focused on, which is one of these, you know, single-purpose networks just focused on NFTs and that kind of ecosystem. So It'll be interesting to see how that kind of takes shape. It's a very new player in the NFT space, and obviously that can be, a lot of competition in that space. But because it's a purpose-built chain just for NFTs, they can definitely have a lot less fees and potentially create good tools. But they're kind of, from an interface perspective, they're still working on it.
If you don't mind me asking a question, if their concept is essentially like lots of small home computers versus one large computer, it sounds like there will be a lot of reliance on bridging, and bridging is kind of like the biggest the elephant in the room is that bridges are where most of the hacks are happening right now. So I'm just wondering whether they had a specific approach to bridges, whether there was a focus on security, what was the vibe there about that?
Yeah, so basically the protocol used for these networks to communicate becomes the bridge in a way. So separate bridges aren't needed because it's built into the protocol and the system that these assets can move around. So you don't have to have some custodial bridge somewhere that relies on things. The actual network itself functions with that functionality built into it. So bridging sounds terrifying, and we've certainly seen. Are we at $1 billion in hacks over the last 365 days due to bridges? I like to think we hit $1 billion in hacks. Excellent, perfect.
We did.
So we're perfect. So yes, bridges are an issue in the space, and in a way, this is kind of the solution to it. We don't have these kind of poorly designed or secured or just overly complex systems. We build it in directly to the protocol and to the application layer, and now we don't have to rely on those. And right now we're seeing it successfully with tokens. I want to say there's at least hundreds of separate Cosmos networks, all intertwined with each other with assets that flow freely between. And knock on wood, there hasn't been an issue yet. If you're not familiar with Terra, what a Freudian slip. Terra was actually a Cosmos-based asset, and UST, the stablecoin that collapsed in a giant ball of fire this last year, was kind of traveling or was moving around these different networks. And when we saw Terra collapse, that had impact on all these other networks that had these assets kind of flowing freely in and out of it. But nothing stopped working. Sure, the asset lost, its value, but all of these networks continue to work. And it was fascinating to see how well the concept was able to kind of live through that situation.
I think definitely Cosmos needs to be recognized for just having that native inter-blockchain communication built in, and it's something that the Ethereum folks should learn to appreciate and maybe even implement.
And Josh, was this where Sunny was talking about the mesh network and how, they were talking about that security there? I kind of understood it at a high level, but not enough to explain it.
There's a couple really cool concepts that come together, and it is super complicated to understand, and it's a weird kind of paradigm. So it's definitely not like I struggle with it. Everyone struggles with it, I think, other than like Sunny and Zaki and the people who are working on it. But I hope they struggle with it too. But there's inter-blockchain security, or shared security models. So it's a proof of stake. They're each proof of stake networks, but there's like a couple big ones. There's Osmosis and the Cosmos network. Those two in particular have a lot of validators. They're very strong networks, similar to the strength of the Ethereum network. They're very effective proof of stake networks. But if I'm building my own chain and I have maybe two validators, it's not a strong network. It's susceptible to things going wrong, susceptible to something nefarious coming in. Sorry about that, Cheyenne. It's problematic in many ways to have a network with not enough validators. So what these larger networks are coming in and saying, they're saying, our validators can validate your chain too. That's fine. So they're creating this infrastructure where similar to actually how Ethereum is that, world computer in a way. They're providing that same security as a service to these other chains that are small and upcoming to help them. But there's other cool things happening too, like interchain accounts. So I could be interacting with Stargaze on the NFT platform, and through the Stargaze network, actually trigger a trade over on the Osmosis chain and have my assets come back and maybe pay for something in a different currency. Or what that also means is if my validator is facilitating the Cosmos chain or the Osmosis chain, because certain things are happening in different tokens, if I'm interacting with the Stargaze network and paying a fee in the Stargaze network with stars, but it's using Osmosis, that means Osmosis validators are now actually earning Osmosis and stars at the same time. So there's this really fascinating kind of intertwined aspect, which hopefully we don't just end up back at a giant mainframe, because that wouldn't be the point of this whatsoever. But it's neat to see these little pieces evolve, and we'll see how they actually work.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is that those transactions happen atomically, or do they happen within the same block? Like, what's the time frame that these things happen?
Oh, so how the interblockchain communication protocol works is there's actually relayers. And a relayer is paying attention to two different chains and saying, okay, I see the initiation of an IBC-based transaction. Who do I have to go talk to? Oh, I have to go talk to this chain and issue a transaction over there. So it's about these relayers who, right now, unfortunately, the relayers are kind of like just working for the good of the network. They'll figure out how to monetize those, but usually it's the validators anyways. So the validators are earning their tokens, and they're using part of that tokens that they receive to actually then facilitate the communication between the networks.
So the relayers are like escrow entities that just make sure that these inter-blockchain.
I wouldn't call them escrow
happens.
at all.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't call them escrow. Yeah, they're not. The relayers hold no funds. They're just telling the other, like, there's a cryptographic proof over here, and they're relaying that cryptographic proof over to this other network. So they never have the ability to spend the funds. They're just telling the different they're just making sure each network knows about the state.
Are relayers a possible like attack vector? Will there be a necessity to have like validator relayer separation, for example, or are there any like threat models where relayers can possibly be either DOSed, or maybe relayers can censor transactions or things like that?
They can certainly be DOSed, and because they're working for the good of the network, if you send, let's say, a lot of crappy little IBC connections and kind of flood them, they're technically on the other side, depending on the network architecture and the settings of the other network, they're paying transaction fees to relay those transactions because they have to get that data into that other network. So if Ethereum was part of this ecosystem, this IBC ecosystem, which in my opinion it should be, and it probably will be, a relayer needs to pay the Ethereum gas fees in order to issue that transaction on Ethereum. So there is certainly DOS possibilities in this, or at least wasting assets, but we're kind of crossing that bridge when we get there.
I was going to ask, what are the what are the incentives for the relayers? Like, why?
Currently, nothing. It's just belief that they will do this for the good of the networks, and certainly they are right now. And that's why it's generally combined with the validator role, because the validators are earning, and it's in their interest that these networks function properly. But I think you'll see that change over time. I just don't think they've figured out what a good model is to actually kind of repay some of this back. Or the different networks could also be written in a way in which specifically IBC transactions can either have less fees or just a different model of payments as well, which is potentially interesting. But that's way above my pay grade, and I couldn't tell you which one they're kind of moving towards. I do have a question for the group about DevCon though, because I'd love to get back to that. Was the merge just old news and boring?
Oh,
I feel like it's like 5 years, and then suddenly just like, oh, it's done.
No, I want to say, first of all, like this felt like more a Cosmos vampire attack on DEF CON goers, which was like pretty cool. But for the merge, I basically made these stickers. I'm gonna show you like merge. So yesterday they talked to me about the surge. And so this was like something that was going around because at CEP we had this issue that like we still had to like explain merge even though it was like before like something that happened. A lot of conversation were still about the merge more because one of the things I learned was that even though we knew merge is happening in like September, the ecosystem is kind of like disbelief that it's going to happen because like the ecosystem is not necessarily ready. Like we don't have data pipelines around it. The infrastructure is not necessarily ready for it. Like we saw with the MEV and transaction fees that like right after the merge, there was not easy, like it's still today not an easy way to find how much yields and transaction fees you're getting. It's one of the products actually like we're working on our end at EtherCap, but like it's interesting that like we thought the product that we're looking at is like we're way behind like Etherscan, Beacon Chain, and all others, and then suddenly we all in the same place, like the same issues. And we've seen like Ethereum Foundation put this data challenge out there with really good prizes that, hey, like create more data pipelines, visualizations, what's happening after the merge. We've seen a lot work on the MEV side because like the OFAC related like blocks and like the relays, but not necessarily the ecosystem wide as like more visualization through like blocks, which I'd love to see. Like I remember seeing I love that sticker too. I remember seeing these like txstreet.org or some website that like you could see like this transaction, these South Park characters getting the bus and moving with the transaction real time. And I love that. And I want to see more of those after the merge and like how that's impacting the ecosystem. Yeah, there was a few other things because there were so many things that we talked about, but I forgot about them.
I mean, yeah, the merge there was like a song and it was pretty cool. And there was like, yeah, there was a lot of stuff at the conference that was cool. One of the things I wanted to go back to is, Josh, what you were talking about was kind of like some of the problems that are being solved or the like challenges that are being addressed. But Edgar, you are here and you're from Nethermind. And do you want to explain a little bit about like the problems that Nethermind is trying to solve? Because I don't know very much about what all you do and I'd like to hear.
Yeah, sure thing. So basically, Nethermind started, and this is kind of fun because this is kind of the pitch that I kind of had at the booth. So Nethermind started as a client. I think right now it's like 6% of the Ethereum nodes are running Nethermind, which is actually quite cool. It started as that, but we're solving a lot of things. Now that one of you was talking about account abstraction, we have Christoph Gasso with us, which is right now like one of the big experts on the subject. We have, for example, a lot of research. Right now, there's a whole research team. And there are several projects, but something really cool that they're working on is distributed validator technology. They're working with Lido and SSV on that topic. Now, one of the cool things are like, well, I say one of the cool things because that's kind of what I'm working on. We have a small team of Cairo developers. We're kind of trying to get specialized on the StarkNet ecosystem. And let's see, we have, there's something really cool. And I met one of those guys at DEF CON, and we spent like 3 hours talking about formal verification. We're doing formal verification right now for Cairo mainly with Lean. Lean is a way to prove, I don't know, like a small intro on what formal verification is, perhaps because I'm just talking about it as if like it makes sense. But to be honest, I just learned about it like a couple of months ago. Is that you can prove that a program will behave correctly in every instance, and I don't mean to say that as we usually do with tests and some specific cases, but we actually can have a mathematical proof that with all the inputs, the outputs will be what's expected. So that's quite cool. We also have auditors right now, and well, there's a big team of auditors there. But I think one of the coolest things is the research team, which I got to know a lot on this DevCon, and to go. I mean, you only know someone when you go out with them and actually share a drink with them and just get to know what they're actually doing. And I met over there Michal from the research team, which is working on like distributed validated technology. There's a new way, and actually there's a talk at DevCon from one of my friends to use things that were kind of so known, but in different approaches, like Shamir secret sharing. There's a cool way to not have to memorize not have to remember the IDs of each key. Stuff like that. That's kind of what Nethermind is doing right now. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that. Like, it's impossible to keep up with everything that's happening in this space. So like all of us on the call work in this ecosystem, and we're all like nodding like, I don't know about this yet, because there's so many different things, which is cool. So in a minute, since Michelle, it was your first DevCon and maybe you're newer to Web3, I'd love to hear about that experience. But real quick, before we go to that, because we're going to need to wrap up here, Luna, I would love if you would share your story, even just like just a blip of how you moved from being an artist to being interested in NFTs. Like, I know you've created some and you're a really gifted artist and photographer as well, but there's so much room for things that might seem disparate to be able to come in and make an impact. I think that's kind of something that you're doing with combining art and NFTs.
Yeah, so I think it all started because I had always been a part of crypto, but I was never really like in a company. I never had a job, except I did some branding photos for some of the Denver-based companies. So when NFTs came along, I was really excited because obviously my background is traditional art. And so I found this opportunity to create these stories about crypto. So I also like education like you guys. And I wanted to tell stories about like pre-NFTs, because there's a lot of people that came into the industry and all they know are NFTs and beyond. But there's like a whole history before, like when there was only Bitcoin conferences. And I wanted to kind of like tell those stories through, like I did one where I told the story of Shapeshift through, I see it talks, through the animals. I told the story of Shapeshift through the different logos that Shapeshift had over the years. And so I did 10 pieces of that. And then the next creation that I did were 10 pieces of, I called it the animals of cryptozoology. And so I took the animals that are like historic in crypto and like told their stories along with art history styles to basically express the story that a lot of people don't know. So I want to continue to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I love it. That's really cool. I kind of want to see those if you can share. I would love to put that in the chat or in the description. If you've got any like of the examples of how things have progressed through, I think that's fascinating. And yeah, so thank you for that. I want all the art that you create because you are fantastic. So if you guys don't know Luna Hawk, you can follow her on Instagram and Twitter and you'll be able to link to her, but her stuff is really cool. And I love seeing this kind of merge between different types of media and different things. And Michelle, that's kind of, I want to hear about your experience as a newbie in a way, but not really, because you've been circling around for a while, right? Like you've been doing digital media and you've got this history, but you've sort of shifted now into being more like Web3 Ethereum. So would you explain that as well before we go? I would love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually got a security background. So I kind of had been building in the space, but more in the IoT security space, and then kind of completely shifted. And then I had been circling around, like I knew what was going on, but like the language and everything else felt so new that I felt like I had no idea what anyone was talking about. So I think a big part of that, and I think a big part of that was just like feeling comfortable enough to feel okay with like not knowing, and then slowly bit by bit getting to know the community and stuff. And I was a DEF CON scholar this year, and so I think like so earlier this year I was like, you know what, like I think I want to just fully learn more, and started making more time and stuff. But the scholars program was really great because so there were like 50 of us, and then a bunch of us who got to who like, you know, we were at DEF CON and like we got to meet and stuff. And I had no idea there was all this work being done in different emerging markets. And I'm in Dubai, I'm originally Pakistani, and I feel like that, like, I feel like a huge disconnect in terms of like, I feel like there's so much more that could be done. And so I felt like that little bit of a lack of like sort of presence in terms of the region and at DEF CON. And I'm hoping like there was just so much I could learn from like a lot of the LATAM countries that I didn't know were so crypto native, and, you know, that were, yeah, just in terms of how it was being used is just incredible. So just got to learn a lot of that, and learning from everyone else how they're working on the education side a lot, because that's something that I feel like I really want to take back and now work on something where we can get more women in STEM, especially into this space. And so it's just like a really cool experience. I feel like it's one of the most exciting and cool and amazing experiences. And I think this is going to be like one of those yearly things where I hope I can be at all the future DEF CONs. So yeah.
Yeah, like once you go, you're like, I can't not go. Josh, you were saying that to me. You're like, I am so sad I can't be there this year, because you know how awesome it is. So it's like once you've been, it's hard to kind of go back to not going to these again. Yeah, it's like it's tough, because once you've kind of had a taste, you just like want to go to all of these conferences every year. Well, so we're running out of time, but I feel like we could probably talk for another, I don't know, 12 hours. So what I would like to do is we're going to end this stream, but then there's a number of different things that have come from it that I would love us to continue talking about. So for those watching, stay tuned. We'll announce more follow-ups related to some of these. I want to do one that when we talk about NFTs and artwork, I think that's really important. I want to talk about client diversity, which is a little of what we talked about with Edgar. Otto, I feel like we didn't hear as much about Polygon as we want to, and I love how so many things come from Ethereum. And everyone here came together because we all love crypto. We all love Ethereum. We all love all the things that came in. And Michelle, we're going to be working together to talk a little bit more about women's role in the ecosystem and how we can increase education. And I'm just so grateful for every single one of you for spending an hour of your time with us. Thank you. If anyone has anything to say in closing, please jump in now.
I learned so much about pandas and zebras today in ZKP. That's something.
That's why we're here. All right.
I learned that we have a bunch of new potential committee members joining us today. So thank you. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful meeting you all.
Yes. And Josh, you're so humble. I like how you're like, I've been around for a while. Josh is a co-founder of C4. So don't let his humbleness hide from the reality of all that he's actually done to allow us to be here today. So thank you all. And we will talk to you all soon. Take